So welcome everyone. We're really excited to have you here. We have 5 fellow alumni that are going to be talking to you today about the fellowship. And we're going to start with some quick introductions from all of us. So my name is Eric Hinterman. I am currently at SpaceX, working full-time. Before that, I was at MIT doing my PhD in aerospace engineering. And even before that, I was a chemical engineer. So it's been quite the journey, but I was a fellow in the class of 2020 through this program, and it was awesome. Maya, you want to go?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Maya. I am a fellowship alum from the class of 2019. I recently just started a new job working at Blue Origin. Before that, I was finishing up a master's program in material science and working at Virgin Galactic. And I started working at Virgin Galactic immediately after I graduated my undergrad. I was placed with Fiji as part of this program. So yeah, excited to talk to you guys today. Halen?
Hey y'all, I'm Halen. I'm also at SpaceX. I'm fortunate enough to work with Eric actually. Started at SpaceX right after finishing up grad school at Stanford this year. And when I was a fellow in the program, I worked with ABL Space Systems, which was an awesome experience. And through that, I've had the chance to work at a few places across this industry.
Go ahead, Bree.
I'm Bree. Trevor and I went to Colorado School of Mines, and after graduating from there, I now work at Impulse Space. And through the fellowship, I was placed at Millennium Space Systems.
And hey everyone, my name is Michael. I'm a grad student currently studying aerospace engineering at Virginia Tech, and I am part of the most recent group of fellows part of the fellowship. And I was placed at Virgin Galactic this summer.
Awesome. Okay, so let's get started. Again, we're going to have about a 30-minute presentation, and then we'll save the second 30 minutes so you guys can ask questions in the Q&A, and then we'll answer those live. So to start, we have to talk about Matthew Isakowitz, which is what this whole program is based around. It's in memory of Matthew. And I think it's important to sort of help you all get to know who he was as a person in order to really understand what we're looking for in the fellowship. And so I just want to tell you a little bit about him and his background and what he did. He was known as someone who's really passionate about commercial space flight. He really wanted to move the commercial space sector forward. And in addition to that, everyone that talks about him always remembers how kind and generous of a person he was. He really made an effort to make everyone around him feel included and welcome and excited about the commercial space industry, just like he was. So Matthew's journey really got kicked off all the way back in high school. Actually, he served on the X Prize Foundation in high school during the flight of Spaceship One, which some of you might remember was the first privately piloted spacecraft. So that was a really exciting time for him. And he just rode that right into college and started working on NASA's New Horizon mission, which a few years ago flew by Pluto. And it's, I think, still continuing today. So he worked at the Applied Physics Lab for that. After that, it's hard to list all his accomplishments, so I'm going to try. He then worked at Space Adventures on human spaceflight. Then he worked at SpaceX on the Dragon capsule, and you can see him in the picture here with Elon Musk in the early days of SpaceX, when Elon had a lot less hair, actually. And after that, Matthew ended up going to, well, during this time he was at Princeton University, and then he graduated summa cum laude from Princeton with his degree in, it was the combined mechanical and aerospace engineering program. And then he got a master's degree in international science and technology policy from George Washington. And I think one of the important things that we look for in the fellows for this program that's based on Matthew's experience is the combination of engineering and policy. And so Matthew really understood that to push commercial spaceflight forward, you needed both. You couldn't just do the engineering, you also needed the policy aspect of it. And so he really took that to heart and worked on both. And so after that, he really began his career as the associate director at the Commercial Spaceflight Federation, which for those of you that might not be too familiar with it, it was a pretty pivotal organization in kickstarting a lot of the companies that we know today, like SpaceX, Blue Origin, and Virgin Galactic. And after that, Matthew continued working in the industry at Planetary Resources and Astronis. So he covered, the whole gambit during his short career, and we really want to continue his passion through all the fellows, through all of you, and to push the commercial spaceflight industry forward. And that also includes, again, his attitude towards it and the people in it. So on that note, I'm going to read you a quote from Peter Diamandis about Matthew. And Peter's the founder of the X Prize, but he also is just a serial entrepreneur in this space. So you might have heard of him from something else as well. But he worked with Matthew, and he said, Matthew reminds me of myself, someone who early in their life identified space as a primary passion, and someone who was always asking how we can do more and go faster. So rather than choosing the traditional path, Matthew lived the space entrepreneur's dream. I think you guys got that when I read out all of the places that he worked and all the things that he accomplished early on. A path that would ultimately bring him back into my life, where he interned at both Space Adventures and Planetary Resources. And it would be an honor and pleasure for me to host young space entrepreneurs with Matthew's level of passion and dedication. And I love the last line, because that's what we're looking for. So if you're wondering what we're looking for, it's young space entrepreneurs and people that can be leaders in the industry with Matthew's passion and dedication. Okay, so the fellowship, some of you might know this, but it basically has 4 primary parts, and Halen will give you a little bit more info about each of these as we go. The first is an internship. So the following summer, you'll intern at one of our host companies, which is a commercial spaceflight company. You'll go through an interview process for the fellowship that will then have the internship as part of it. The second part is mentorship. You get paired with one of our awesome executive mentors. And this is maybe I think the most impactful part of the fellowship for me. Again, you'll hear about it more later, but the mentors that we have are incredible, and they know, a lot of them knew Matthew, they know the program. So they're really willing to work with you and get to know you on a personal level. We have the summit, which is a trip where all of the fellows fly out to LA. And not only do you get to hang out with each other, network with each other, get to know all of your passions and interests, you also get to do a bunch of tours of all the cool space companies in LA, which is a really neat opportunity. And then the last part is the community. You see 5 of us here that are alumni, and there's a whole bunch more of us. And we all stay in touch, and we all form a really great alumni community that help each other out and share our excitement about space. And we're collectively trying to push the industry forward. So I'll pass it off now to Halen.
Thanks, Eric, for that overview. To dig a little deeper into those 4 facets of the program, I just want to talk a little bit about just how specifically great each of these opportunities are. And so starting off with those internships and the host companies that are in that. This is the list from the last year. Every year, the group of host companies changes around a little bit based on who's available and as well as who applies. We always want to have a great fit between our fellows and our host companies. But here you'll see a group of companies, many of which you may recognize, names like SpaceX and Blue Origin. Those are pretty much regulars throughout our program, but also some really exciting young innovative companies like ABL and Redwire that are kind of pushing the boundaries of their respective industries. There's big launch companies that build enormous rockets. There's space logistics companies and satellite companies. So really across the entire commercial space sector, we have some representation and different company sizes. And as Eric mentioned, as part of the program, you'll get paired with an executive mentor. These mentors are really outstanding people from the industry who have incredible experiences that they want to share with young professionals. So looking at this, you might see astronauts, CEOs, and other founders across the industry who have done incredible things. Some of these are pretty recognizable faces and names. And you have the chance to get paired with one of them and learn from one of them and their experiences. Many of the fellows have told stories about how close they've gotten with these people and how years after doing the program, they're still in touch and still getting advice and being a part of this kind of greater space community. The summit is really exciting, and I wanted to highlight this because it was such a great experience for me. Every year, all of the fellows in a certain class will get flown out to LA and have the chance to meet each of the other fellows in the program, as well as some of those outstanding people I just talked about, as well as some special guests. In different years, we've had some really cool people. Actually, if you look at that bottom right photo, so that's a table at one of the dinners. You've got Gwynne Shotwell, who's the president and I think COO of SpaceX. Steve Isokowitz, who helps run this program and is the CEO of the Aerospace Corporation, talking to Tim Ellis, who's the CEO and founder of Relativity. And as you might guess, the next person on the right is also CEO and founder, Tom Mueller, who was the first employee at SpaceX and now leads Impulse Space, which is where Bree works now. So really just an exciting community of people, and you get to sit down and talk to them. And this is one of the coolest events because all these people are here to talk to you. So it's one of the first networking events you might go to where all the really, really experienced people are there for you. And with that, you get to do some really exciting tours and get some cool insight as well. I really loved that part. I grew up watching how it's made, like a lot of other engineers. So getting to go and see a factory is pretty exciting for me. And it's also kind of an exclusive access that you get to see to a lot of these really neat and niche companies. Now that I work at SpaceX, I'm basically banned from going to see some of those places. So you can kind of see really cool things that no one else is going to get to. So definitely take advantage of the summit. And the last facet I wanted to highlight is that community. So even years after becoming fellows, you'll see that fellows are still hanging out in their relative local areas. They're still going on trips together, still meeting up at conferences, and getting to know each other really well. Many of us end up working together at some point, bringing each other to different companies, and just generally building that community of really passionate and dedicated people in this industry. Now, Maya is going to tell you about what it takes to become a fellow. Well, I may have jumped a little early. Real quickly, I wanted to give some notes on what experiences have been like in words of previous fellows. And I really like these quotes actually because they kind of highlight the passion that each of these people have and their experiences. So Lucy, who was in my class, I wanted to highlight there. She notes, don't be intimidated by the program and just go for it. If you're interested in this program, you should absolutely be applying. This program will give you amazing guidance for your career and insight into the commercial space industry that we could have never gotten elsewhere. Maya said, I feel like so many doors have been opened for me, and it's incredible to know that I will have friends and support anywhere I go in the aerospace industry from now on. So that's that community note again. And then Shane, who was a first-year fellow this year, knows that he's met some of the most wonderful people and made connections that he knows will last a lifetime. So again, just building on that community and the amazing experiences you can have as a fellow. And now
I just want to say that that Halen was too modest to read his own quote, but last year he had a great quote up here as well. So a lot of the fellows have really, all of the fellows have really good things to say about this.
Thanks, Eric.
Okay, great. So now that we've hopefully convinced you how wonderful this program is, I'm going to talk through some of the logistics and key information. So our application opened on the 31st of August, and it's due on the 14th of October. So you have a little over a month at this point to get all of the application components together. I'll go through those in a bit more detail on the next slide. But once the applications are submitted, in the late fall and early winter, we'll be conducting some virtual interviews with all of the applicants. And then by the end of the winter, the fellow class is selected and paired with their host companies for their internships. And then the internships start at the beginning of summer, and the program culminates with the summit in July. You might see like a familiar face on this slide with Brett Alexander there with the summit picture. So that was for my fellowship, but yeah, the summit's super fun, and kind of a crazy experience being in a room with like the most powerful people in industry. So it was a great time. Okay, so now some details about the actual meat and potatoes of the application process. Listed there are the components that you need to include in your application. There's a resume as well as 3 essays, 2 letters of recommendation, and then an official school transcript. Of the letters of recommendation, at least one of them must come from a faculty member at your university. So once all the applications are in, after a first round of review, there are select applicants who interview with the MIFP team. And then after that first round of interviews with the fellowship team, there's another round of selection, and then a second set of interviews to match prospective fellows with host companies. And then the application process finishes when the fellows are finalized and matched with their host companies and executive mentors. So now I'm going to talk through some of the eligibility criteria for the fellowship. So in order to apply to the fellowship, you must be a junior, senior, or graduate student with the intent of pursuing a career in the commercial space industry. Your degree must be in engineering or science, or you must be actively pursuing one. And then we're also looking for, as Eric has mentioned before, the fellowship class to have like significant passion for this industry, and then also just generally well-rounded interests and passion outside of that as well. We're looking for really excited, interested individuals who can contribute meaningfully to moving this industry forward. That's what this fellowship is about. And then lastly, because a lot of our companies do hold ITAR regulations, you have to be a US citizen or permanent resident to be eligible for the program. So that's just an overview of the application details and timeline. Next Tuesday, there'll be an application workshop. If you would like a little bit of help with the actual like nitty-gritty of your application, they'll go through some examples and help with resume, essay, recommendation letter selection, that type of thing. And there's a link for that down here, and then also on our website as well. And so that about wraps up all of the content we have. If you have any questions, we'll do a Q&A now immediately following this, but you're also welcome to reach out to that email down there. And yeah, thanks for joining us. We're excited to take your questions and hope to see your applications in.
Yeah, just so everyone knows, because I see a few questions in the chat. If you look at the bottom toolbar on Zoom, there's a chat and there's also a Q&A. So post your questions in the Q&A. It just lets us track it a little bit easier and make sure that we get them answered. So we can start on those now. Again, we're all volunteers doing this because we love the fellowship and we think it's a really awesome opportunity. So I know this was an info session to give you the information that you need, but I really hope that you understand how important this fellowship was to each and every one of us. So you get excited about it. Let me start with the questions that were posted in the chat, just because I said you don't have to repost those, and then we will move on. So the first one is, are the virtual interviews that were mentioned with former fellows, or are they with Steve Isokowitz himself? Michael, would you want to answer that one?
Yeah, sure. So let me quickly just pull that one up. So currently it can be with Steve, or it can be with other members of the fellowship team. So in the past it's been Sarisha, but there are different individuals who are part of that executive group of people in the fellowship. So it could be Steve, although it could also be another person on the team who's doing the interviews for that year.
Yeah, thanks. And for the record, the five of us, we're not part of the MIFP team that we're talking about. That's the team that runs the entire fellowship and takes care of everything, which includes Steve and other members of the family. So you'd interview with, some of them, but it wouldn't be with former fellows, like Michael said. Okay, so the second question I see is, can third-year community college students apply to the fellowship? Anybody want to grab that one?
Yeah, I can, or you can go ahead, Bree. You got it. Okay. Yeah, so as long as your academic standing is that of a junior in college, you're eligible to apply. We're looking for applicants who would be graduating in 2024. And again, if you have questions about like your specific situation, you can always reach out directly to the team. But broadly, if you're like a junior or the equivalent of a junior graduating in 2024, you're eligible to apply.
Yep. Okay, this one is, if you are a first-year grad student, must the faculty recommendation letter come from a professor at your grad school? And the answer is no. It can come from faculty at your undergrad, for example, because we know you might not have had time to make a good connection in grad school yet. And then, we already answered the junior standing one. Okay, so I think I'm gonna, oh, people are still posting in the chat. Okay, I'll add one more. Okay, as a current grad student with prospective graduation date in the spring of 2023, would I be allowed to still apply? This one has come up before, and I'm trying to remember what the answer to this is. Because essentially you would need to do the internship, because that's a major part of the fellowship, and that's what the host companies are, signing up for. But I think you technically can do that and then go full-time after, but we might need to check on that one for you.
Eric, I can answer. So I did something similar. I was a graduate student and then graduated. So as long as you're still a graduate student, you were still a student when you were applying, then you were still eligible.
Awesome. Thanks, Bree. Yeah, actually, that makes a lot of sense because we have seniors that apply all the time. Yeah. Okay, let's jump into the Q&A. Oh boy, we got lots of them. And by the way, other panelists, if you guys see like quick answers, you could just type answers to them in the Q&A. I think that the longer answer ones we'll want to read out loud, but if there's short answer ones, feel free to answer those while we're going through these, just so we cover all of them. Okay, so Carter asked, if you're a first-year grad student with no academic history, is it acceptable to only submit your undergraduate transcript? I think that that's probably, I get what you're saying, is that you don't even have a full semester under your belt in grad school. I think that you can still get an unofficial transcript for your first semester that doesn't even show grades. And just to like show that you are a student, because we need to know that you're a student. But there's probably other ways to prove that you're a student. So we might have to get back to you on that one too, unless somebody else knows the answer to that.
I actually did my I was applying when I was in my first year of grad school. So it's still good to send your current school, but yeah, your undergrad, I think primarily, since that's what contains all your courses and stuff. I think that's the most important part to send over. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I think,
and even a transcript, even a transcript that doesn't have grades is good to have, as you said, Eric, just to confirm.
Yeah, and I think your schools will still supply that to you if you ask.
Yeah, I think most places do as well.
Okay, let me read the next one and somebody feel free to grab it. Yeah, okay. How does the internship format work for college seniors who are otherwise recruiting for full-time?
So like other people can jump in if they feel like I'm missing something here, but college seniors who are part of this fellowship program are treated the same as other years who are part of this fellowship program. And so it would be an internship of the same duration as other fellows. I, for example, was a Rise at College senior when I did my internship, and I was able to get a return offer from Virgin Galactic and go work there after graduation. So that's definitely something that's possible. It's happened to fellows before, and it's something that can be pursued. But from the fellowship side, I don't believe there's any big distinction made for college junior versus college senior.
Yep.
Like any other internship, you can continue to network and try to get brought on full time there, but we don't have the fellowship doesn't play any role in that part of it.
Yep. But yeah, often companies will just roll you into full time if you do a good job. Okay, in our essays, yeah, Halen, you want to answer this one? In our essays, should or can we cite external sources to support our arguments?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I just wanted to hop in here because as we mentioned, there's going to be an application workshop next week that Bree and I are leading, and we'll get more details about what we expect out of the essays and your transcripts and your letters of recommendation. So highly recommend that. But to answer this question, the essays are really about demonstrating your unique suitability for this fellowship and kind of what you bring to the table. So it's not a research paper. We don't expect you to necessarily demonstrate expertise. We always appreciate when people know what they're talking about. So, if you're going to cite or quote a fact, it's something that inspired you, make sure it's accurate. But no, you definitely don't need to be citing external sources or adding any kind of references to your application other than your own.
Nice. Thanks, Halen. Okay. Other than a faculty member, who would you suggest would be a good person to get a letter from? Maya?
Yeah, great.
I'm saying Maya should answer.
Yes, yeah, no, I'm
You
just
could be
updating
good
everyone.
for it.
Yeah. No, so the point of these letters is to demonstrate why you would be a good fit for our fellowship. And so that's not necessarily the same thing as why you'd be a good fit for any other internship. We're looking for people with like a pretty specific set of qualities and qualifications. And you want to find someone who's able to speak to you not only in terms of like academic experience, but also just in terms of like your personality and the things that you value. So people will get professors, people will get coaches, people will get people who they've worked with in the past. The really key thing there is to find someone who's able to explain why you as a person sort of align with the criteria that we tend to look for in our fellows.
Cool. And there is some guidelines on the MIFP website if you go to that, for talking about letters of recommendation and what you should look for. So I'd encourage you all to take a look at that as well. But like Maya said, it's someone who can really speak to your experience and passion. Okay. Let's look at another one. Do applicants usually apply to internships alongside the MIFP, or should we wait until MIFP decisions come out? Anyone?
Yeah, so this is a great question, and we get it every year. So we know that it's really competitive, and we're looking at some of the best students in the country. So we fully expect that you'll be applying to other opportunities for your summer. What we do ask is that throughout your application process, as you're applying, and if you receive any offers, that you communicate that with the MIFP team so that we can be aware and try to accelerate things or basically work around that if need be. But the thing to note here is, you may come to a point where you have an internship on the table or this opportunity, and that decision will be up to you. But it is pretty common to see that applicants are looking at other opportunities as well. Let us know if that's not super clear.
Cool. Okay, this one's pretty short. Is there a GPA requirement? There's no official GPA requirement for the eligibility criteria. We do consider academics to be something important for the program and for your application, but there's a lot of parts to it, right? So if you have what you consider a low GPA, there's other ways to make it up with your experience or with projects that you work on or leadership that you've demonstrated in different groups. So there's a whole host of things that we look at, and GPA is one of them for sure, but there's no requirement for that would disqualify you immediately or anything like that.
Yeah, I'd like to add on to that because a lot of the fellows are involved in different sort of teams, whether it be like a rocketry team or a CubeSat team or some other sort of leadership position in a space related group. So I think like if there are things that may impact your GPA and you also have things that you can talk about and projects that you worked on that show up in your application, then it definitely is more understanding to get an idea of how well-rounded you are.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Michael. That's a really good point. Okay, are the internship applicants primarily undergrad or grad students? Bree, you want to take that?
Yes, thanks, Eric. So there's a mix of both. The program is open to everyone from a junior through grad school, and I'm sure everyone else can say as well. It is quite a wide mix of students of all years and stages in their academic career.
Cool. All right, let's see what else we got. Since most of the students here are passionate about space, how do you suggest that we demonstrate ourselves as unique on our applications in order to stand out? It's a great point. Halen?
Yeah, this is one that we're definitely going to talk about in the workshop as well. So there's another plug for that. But I saw a few questions in the chat around, differentiating yourself on your application. The biggest thing I would recommend is think about experiences that are unique to you and the stories that you alone can tell about leadership that you've done, projects that you've completed, or experiences that you've had that maybe, kind of show your unique passion. We know space is really cool. That's why we all work in it. And I think one of the biggest mistakes we see in essays is a full essay about why space is really cool. We want to learn about you. when we're reading your application. So it's important to kind of focus around that. And certain stories that we hear really frequently are, oh, I saw this movie, or I went to space camp and that was really cool when I was a kid and that's why I'm here. You know, that's not the most unique thing. And I think that it's something that isn't necessarily going to make you stand out. So we'll talk more about it in the workshop if you're able to come. But my biggest recommendation is just let's learn about you rather than, you know, what's really cool about SpaceX today.
Mm-hmm. All right, thanks, Halen. Okay, let's see. I see one highlight here. Are the internship applicants? Oh, we already answered that one. So we'll just need to get rid of that. Okay, maybe I can answer this one. What exactly does a fellowship mean? Do you work alongside a professional on projects relating to the commercial space industry? And if so, what projects have some of you worked on during your fellowships? So the word fellowship is broadly used just to describe this one-year program that you would be accepted into and everything that it entails. So it's not a specific research grant or anything like that. I know you might be thinking of other graduate fellowships. For example, you're awarded based on a project that you want to pursue. That's not what this is. It's a fellowship awarded to you as a potential future leader for the space industry. And it's the MIFP's team way of saying, we want to help you get there. So we can tell you about some of the projects that we worked on at our internships, because you will spend 3 months of the fellowship year working at an internship, but that's not the entire part of the fellowship. There's the mentorship with the executive mentor, there's the networking, there's the summit, and everything else that goes along with it. So maybe we could spend a minute talking about what we worked on, though. I'm a terrible person to answer this because I worked in Blue Origin's advanced development program, which means I'm not allowed to say anything about what I worked on. But do some of the other panelists here want to just briefly say what you worked on for your summer internship?
Yeah, I can go ahead. So I was at Virgin Galactic for my summer internship. As I mentioned, I was an intern on the mechanical operations team. And so I ended up working on like 9 or 10 smaller projects over the course of the summer. And I actually really loved that because I got to see like whole wide variety of applications. So I did some stuff with environmental control within the spaceship. I did some stuff with thermal protection on the outside of the spaceship. And then some procedures and testing write-ups, and then as some ground support equipment work as well. So I did a whole bunch of stuff, and then started at Virgin Galactic as a mechanical operations engineer, and then pivoted to a payloads engineer halfway through that. But yeah.
Would anybody else like to, just in 30 seconds or a minute, say what you worked on over the summer?
I can add, I was also at Virgin Galactic. So although we were both at Virgin Galactic, Maya and I was actually on the aerodynamics team this year. So I was doing a lot more of stuff where I was looking at experimental or test flights, and then comparing that to simulation data, and doing a lot of more like numerical analysis of the vehicle and getting an understanding of like the aerodynamics. So although it was at the same company, based on our interests, we were still able to find different positions that were suited to our particular passion in spaceflight.
Perfect. Okay, we've had a couple questions about number of applicants and how many are accepted and everything else. It definitely varies year to year. We're in the 5th or 6th year of the fellowship now, I believe. And so we've had different numbers each year, but I'd say we average about a 15% acceptance rate. And I don't want that to scare anybody away from applying. I really hope you all apply. I think almost everyone that became a fellow had imposter syndrome and maybe saw all this and all the executive mentors you get paired with and stuff, and they had a thought, oh, maybe I'm not good enough for this. But please apply. You are good enough, and applying won't hurt you. It'll just give you potentially a really good chance at this. Okay. Here's another one that's potentially similar to one that we've already answered, but I think it's a slightly different take. For undergrads who might not have the same level of experience as grad students, how can we demonstrate our passion and dedication in order to stand out? Would anybody want to take a shot at that one? how do undergrads stand out when compared to grad students?
Yeah, I can go ahead and speak to this. I did this program the summer after my junior year of college. So I was an undergrad when I did it, and my previous experience hadn't been in industry at all. It was all research-based experience. I think like the big thing is that like if you're applying to this program, it's because you're passionate about something within this sector. And so finding a way to like just like speak honestly about the things that you're passionate about always comes through in applications. I don't think that there's we first of all don't like penalize undergrads for not knowing as much about like Eric did a PhD about making oxygen on Mars, and I didn't know anything about that, but like I was good, you know. So we don't penalize undergrads for not having as specified and well developed areas of expertise as grad students. I think the more critical thing is being able to write essays about things that you feel like you can really genuinely and honestly speak about with passion. Yeah. Yep. If we feel like that doesn't answer the question, someone else can jump in. But I think it just comes down to being able to share the things that you're passionate about with us.
Cool. Okay. I'm going to move on to the next one. What types of positions are available at host companies? And are there any government relations or public policy positions? Which I think is a really good question. I'll say in general, I mean, you saw the host companies, and each of those companies has probably many different types of roles available. So those aren't pre-specified by the Matthew Isakowitz Fellowship Program, where we're only hiring a single propulsion engineer for one company or something like that. It's what the company needs at the time and what we want to match you up with. So there's a whole bunch of types of engineering, design, et cetera, roles at these companies. I think that the more interesting part of the question is, are there government relations or public policy positions? And that definitely depends on the host company. And in the past, we've had host companies with those positions. I don't know if anybody else on the panel knows this year if we have a company with a role like that. And if not, we can get back to you on it.
Yeah, I don't think we can say just yet. I think I would just encourage you to apply. We've certainly had people have experiences within the policy side of things or the business or venture side. So it's not necessarily all pure engineering roles or pure science roles. There's a good mix.
I think what we could say is when you apply, you're asked to talk about or when you interview, you're asked to talk about some of the types of companies and roles that you'd be interested in. So bring this up when you're applying and interviewing, and we'll see if there's a good match. Okay, let's keep rolling. Do you have any advice for the application and how to make the best application possible? Bree, you want to take that?
I did, as a shameless plug for the application workshop, which is next week. The RSVP is out now. It'll be next Tuesday at the same time. Yeah, you should join us. We're going to be talking about everything about applications. So.
Sounds good. Okay, this one says, I was wondering if you're a finalist after the virtual interviews, do you only get matched with one company? And if it doesn't work, you're not selected? Or would you be matched with another company until you find a good match? Who wants to take this one? Otherwise, I can take a shot at it.
I feel like maybe you should take this.
Yeah, it's kind of a gray area right now. I mean, what we want to do is find good matches for both the fellow and the company. And so, for example, in my case, I interviewed with one company and it didn't work out. And then I interviewed with a second company and it did. But I know that's not always the case. It just depends on what the availability is and what the roles are that we're looking at for each company. So yeah, right now that's a bit of a gray area. It depends on the candidate, I guess is the easy way to say it. Okay. All right, let's see, we're getting there. And I haven't been meaning to skip the ones at the top. They were just, I was trying to go for the ones with more upvotes. So are there companies to support me as someone who's very interested in leading the way to advance space propulsion development? Fusion propulsion is important if we want to become a multiplanetary species. I'd say, first of all, I agree. Second of all, you probably need to look at the list of host companies and what they're working on. I don't think any of us are an expert on all of the projects at each of those companies, but I hope that a couple of them have fusion propulsion projects. Does anyone know of a company that's currently working on it and can say it? I don't know if it's.
Yeah, I don't know if that's something we could share.
Yeah, I don't know. Okay, but take a look at the host companies and you can, if you know, read about what those companies are working on, then you could maybe find a role for that. Okay, if you were selected as a fellow, do we have to do another interview process for the summer internship? Maya, you want to take that one?
Yeah, so I can speak to this a bit. So the interview process for the internship with the host company occurs sort of like in conjunction with our fellowship internal process, but the fellowship team, basically what happens is the fellowship team goes through a few rounds of selection and then has a list of qualified candidates, and then after that tries to match prospective fellows with host companies. And so once you've made it through the first few rounds of interviews within the fellowship, then there's an interview with a prospective host company. And then if that interview goes well, then you're matched. And if it's not a great fit, then that's, again, as Eric said, sort of evaluated on a case-by-case basis. But once the fellowship decision is set, whether or not you're a fellow, once the fellowship class of 2023 is selected, all of the fellows will be paired with host companies by that point. Yeah.
Cool, thanks. I see one here at the bottom says, I might have missed this, but do we choose the company to interview with, or do the companies choose us? And that's a good question. And the answer is it's kind of both. Again, you're asked for your preferences and what type of work and what type of companies you're interested in, but it also depends on if the companies have available positions and if it's a good match. So basically your input is taken into account and the company's input is taken into account, and then you're tried, basically you're given a match and you see if it's a good match. Okay, what if we're not sure? Maybe this is one that one of the other panelists could answer, because I think it's a generally good question. What if we're not sure about the type of applications of aerospace we're interested in, meaning that we are pretty open-minded when it comes to space? What do we, what do we talk about in our application, or what type of companies we want to work for? Does anybody have good thought about that?
Yeah, I think Bree might have a good answer to this. I would just say, definitely share that. But I think Bree had mentioned that you were kind of similar when you applied, right?
Yeah, so I was similar. I knew what I was interested in, and I knew I wanted to apply it to specific aspects of space, but I wasn't sure what that really looks like. So I really spent time kind of thinking about it, but I was also honest about it in the application and talked about, I was really interested in thermal fluid energy systems. That's what I was getting my master's in, and I knew I was very curious about how space debris effects is going to be important in the future, but I didn't know exactly how those dots kind of fell in between. So I don't think you have to be, I want this exact role with this exact company, that level, but I think you also do need to have some idea of where, how you want to contribute, where you think you're going. Awesome.
Okay. I see a couple about how many students are accepted, and is it a set number? And it's varied, I think, between 24 to 30 each year. So it's a pretty narrow window. It'll be somewhere in there. And it's, it could vary by a couple people each year, but that's about the number that you should expect. Let's see. I'm trying to make sure for the very specific questions, we might just type to you directly to answer it. Okay, here's one that maybe one of us can talk to while some of us are answering questions. And by the way, if you see your question disappear and you think that we like deleted it or ignored it, it's probably because someone typed a response to you. So you can just go up to the Q&A under the answered tab and you'll see the answer to your question if it disappeared from the open. I don't want people to think that we're ignoring them.
We're not ignoring you, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Here's a question they just kind of want to hear from us. How did all of your experience with the fellowship illuminate how the commercial spaceflight industry can improve life and society on Earth? I feel like it can be hard to see those larger scope concepts as a student engineer without much work experience. I think it's a pretty interesting question. Does anybody have thoughts about commercial spaceflight industry improving life on Earth?
I have so many thoughts about the commercial spaceflight industry improving life on Earth. I think that, like, I could probably write a book about this, but I think that like the thing that is sometimes easy to fall out of touch with as a student is like the scope of the solution that we're building to this problem. And by we, I mean like the commercial spaceflight industry, like something that really resonated with me from my experience as a fellow and even moving into my career after that was that there's just like the people who decide to pursue this and make their careers out of this are like incredibly passionate, incredibly driven, really smart. And there's something very like refreshing, but also like inspiring about like being at a dinner party with like 30 people who are just like super hype about space, you know? And I think that like the one of the biggest takeaways for me was just that this is absolutely kind of like a daunting task that we have set out in front of us to like make Earth an interplanetary species and commercialize spaceflight in general. But there's like lots of people, brilliant people working on it, and the people who are working on it like really want to be working on it, which I think is like really easy to lose sight of when it's like 1 a.m. on a Tuesday and you're doing a problem set. And it's nice being at a place where like you're able to take these like abstract concepts and see them like actually applied to real physical vehicles. So yeah, that's my answer on it. Other people can contribute as well.
I like it. I did a TED talk on how going to space helps life on Earth. So I have a lot of thoughts on it as well. One of the takeaways is that there's been a very trackable return on the investment. For every dollar that goes into the space industry, you get a 17 times return on its benefits to Earth's society and economy. With spin-off technologies and technologies that were invented for space, but ended up having really great uses on Earth. There's a whole ton of examples of that. So it's one of the best investments you can make to improve life on Earth, actually, is investing money in space from what we've seen in the past 60 years of data. So okay, let's see. We have a few more. We're getting close. You obviously keep asking questions if you want. We're going to try and wrap this up in 10 minutes. So I'd say here's another question about previous research experience or previous experience. How much previous research and industry experience do accepted applicants typically have?
I can hop in for that one. We generally like to see that students who are applying to this program have had some level of technical experience in their past. So, maybe this really isn't your first rodeo, as some would say. You've had some kind of an internship experience before. It's good for us to know as we're pairing you with these kind of high-level host companies that you're someone who can perform well in a professional environment and that you can get the work done that you say you can. That all being said, experiences really vary across the board. For some people, it's very easy to get internships and very easy to get into a lab just based on your standing or where you are in school. For others, it's different. And I think if you can still show that you're passionate and you can show that you have some level of work experience that demonstrates your skill, you're still in a good position to apply.
And just jumping on that, like we've had students in the past who have like been super involved with rocket clubs and like other like student run organizations like that. And I think sort of to like put a fine point on what Halen was saying, it's about like having had experiences that have allowed you to like grow your skill set and develop new skills that'll be like useful in industry. So it doesn't just have to be like one bucket for research and one bucket for industry. And if you're not either of those two, then for you, there's like we've had like super diverse applicants in terms of previous experiences. And the big thing is to figure out a way to communicate your interest and figure out a way to like grow your skill set.
Cool. One of these questions is, what would you recommend for someone who's interested in the space sector but is apprehensive to living in remote areas? Living in a metro area is important to me, especially as a young person. And to that,
I will speak to this. Yeah, I will speak to this directly. So I started working full-time at Virgin Galactic, which was a fantastic experience, and was living in New Mexico, Las Cruces, New Mexico, full-time for a little over a year. And I will say that was actually like probably one of the best places I could have been at that point in time. It was like peak pandemic, and so that was nice. That being said, if that is something that you don't think would be your cup of tea, there's loads of other experiences. I'm now in Seattle. I'm like there's like a Starbucks downstairs. Like I'm living in Seattle full time. We have a lot of fellows who are in the LA area, lots in the Seattle area, some in the DC area. And so if being in a metropolitan area is important to you, that's totally fine. That should not be any sort of disqualifier for this fellowship or the industry in general. Plenty of opportunities in metropolitan hubs.
Yeah, I was going to say, I want to live in a remote area because I prefer that. And I don't feel like I really have many options. Because I'll go look at the locations of all of the host companies, and like probably half are in LA, right? Second biggest city in the US. And most of the rest of them are probably in other cities like Houston and Seattle. And there's probably only a couple or a few that have remote areas. So I think you'll be okay. Halen, do you want to answer the one from Carter? If I'm a repeat applicant, does the committee consider both the previous application and the current application?
Yeah, this is a great question. And I've seen a few come through regarding repeat applications, which, by the way, we highly encourage. If you do apply this year and it doesn't work out, we definitely recommend applying again. We love to see that. Specific to this question, we really are only looking at this year's application, but it will get noted in our system that you've applied previously. And so that is good to know. I don't think there'd be a situation where we would go back and look at your previous year's application. We're focused on, kind of seeing what you've learned. What I would recommend, though, is in that new application, make sure you highlight the new experiences you've had in the last year and what makes you an even better applicant for this program.
Cool. Thanks. Michael, you want to answer the question, should we have a specific or a couple of mentors and opportunities in mind when we're writing our essays?
Yeah, sure. So I guess the essays that are in the application process, you'll have the opportunity to discuss the type of company you'd want to work in, you would want to work at, and the type of role you'd like to have. However, for the mentors, I believe that's much later in the fellowship process. So if you want, you can definitely have mentors in mind, and you can mention that in your application. However, in terms of matching you with your mentor, I believe that happens much later in the timeline for the fellowship matching process.
The other thing with that is that everyone who serves as a mentor with this program does it on a fully volunteer basis, like in addition to their day jobs, and we're super, super grateful for that. But we also don't have the mentor list necessarily finalized when we're going through the application review process. It does fluctuate. So we do our best to make sure that all of our fellows are placed in positions where they feel really engaged and challenged and stimulated. But unfortunately, it's not always. It's a bit of a jigsaw puzzle to put together. So we do our best, but we can't always do the one-to-one.
Great. Okay, we have a very similar question from two of the remaining folks about how, if you're a freshman or a sophomore, how can you prepare yourself to be a good applicant come junior year? And I think that you've heard some things over the course of this Q&A, but would anybody like to directly answer that? What can they be doing over the next year or two at school or outside of it?
Yeah, I can I can start and then other people can jump in. I think the biggest thing is finding something that you feel passionately about, that you would like to engage in, that allows you to develop skills that would be useful in this context. So that can be, as I mentioned before, like rocket clubs, or like Formula One teams, or if there's research that's going on at your school that you think is interesting, and has industry applications, that's something you could look into. There isn't like a specific, there aren't like prerequisite courses that we can tell you here, but I think the big thing is finding something where you'll be able to like learn new skills, maybe skills that you wouldn't necessarily be able to learn like just in a classroom, and really grow that skill set. So that's my take on it. Anyone else?
Yeah, get involved.
Yeah, I think for me in my undergrad, I was definitely, I think research, which is what Maya mentioned, was like a huge thing too, where you can be on design teams, but also having like another angle, which is research. And, you know, if you go into the industry, there are research and development teams that companies can have. And so you can get involved from that angle. There's just many different ways that you can explore your interest in commercial space. And as long as you're doing that and you continue to do that, you're setting yourself up to have an even better application.
All right. Well, we just finished all of the questions right on time. So thanks, audience, for timing that well with us. Any last words from the panelists?
Just thanks for making the time to come out to this. We're like really excited for this next class. Reminder, if you have questions, you can always reach us at apply@matthewfellowship.org. These contact emails are also on our website. And second little plug for the application workshop next week.
Yeah.
We're really excited to meet the new class, and glad you guys could all make it today.
And I keep saying this, but this is really a life-changing opportunity. I really hope you all apply, even if you don't think you're going to get selected or it's a lot of work, please apply. This has changed my life, and I think it's changed a lot of other fellows as well. It's really an awesome program. I love talking about it. Okay. All right. Well, thanks, everyone.
Thanks everyone for joining.
Thanks for joining. Take care.